Now it's the best lecture.
Okay, so first of all, what I'd like to begin right now is a very important topic for every chess player from intermediate level, and I believe that it will be especially helpful to you, as I know how difficult it is to decide how to manage a plan, actually how to start a plan, and further on how to manage it. So what we're going to talk right now is about how do you essentially choose what to do, I mean, often known as choosing a strategy, and most importantly, deciding on how to advance in a given area or with this given strategy. The example that we're going to actually start with is an exercise of a gameplay between two grandmasters, two very strong grandmasters, and it is a very good example about a flank attack and essentially how does it begin and how do you continue with it. It was played between the grandmasters Kodov and Steiner in the international match between USSR and USA in Moscow 1955. And yeah, well, this is a very curious type of position actually right here. Before we get started, I'd like to know what do you think about this position yourself? I mean, what are your impressions about the position? What are the qualities and advantages for white, and on the contrary, the drawbacks and the actual disadvantages that both sides have? So can you tell me your own impressions about this position, and what do you think? What do you feel?
Uh, First of all, what I see here is that white has more space,
Yes.
it's more advanced, black is kind of constricted in its position behind the pawn.
Yes.
Comparing like pieces, white superior bishop is totally killing black's
Definitely.
e8, e8 knight, which
Look at
can
that.
still come out
It's
sometimes.
actually White's bishop has this light square dominance. You see that? I mean, can you imagine
Okay.
what's going to happen if this bishop moves and White can replace that bishop with a queen? I mean, a battery like that? That's going to
No,
be
it's
so
checkmate.
killer. Yeah,
Oh,
definitely. Okay, so we have more space. We have a light square dominance. And what would you say about the piece activity and perhaps the pawn structure right now?
well, pawn structure is favorable for white.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, there are
What would
no,
you say so?
there are no black. There are no weak pawns in black's camp. I mean, backward pawn weaknesses, but
Mm.
still, in my opinion, white's pawn structure is kind of favorable for a successful attack on the king side with some, well, he doesn't have so many pieces for a successful attack, but at least he can do something.
That's right. You see, actually, I'm thinking one of the most important things about White's pawn structure is that his pawns are in dark squares, which really leaves that light square bishop very mobile, and
Hmm?
he can do a lot of things there. On the other hand, though, what you just did was a good overview in the position, and overview in some way is a good prelude to actual analysis or planning where you should continue. Nevertheless, that's a very basic type of assessment. See, whenever you're playing a game and you want to really choose a plan, for example, the position just changed or it's a new situation in which you want to play, you're about to choose a plan. What's most important is that you make a little deeper evaluation. And the overview could work, for example, if you're playing a blitz game or rapid game, or you just have to decide very quickly on what to do, so you can't have that time, like, let's say 5 to 10 minutes to think. Yet, right now I'd like to give you three very essential steps on how you can manage the proper evaluation in the position and decide, based on that, what your strategy will be, like what do you want to do and where do you want to do it. So here are these three important steps. The first thing that you have to evaluate are actual weaknesses and potential targets. Now let me explain what both of these mean. When you're talking about weaknesses, okay, we mean specific weaknesses, like for example, pieces that can be actually attacked or put under pressure. So for example, you very correctly suggested that black has no weakness right now because e6 pawn, for example, could have been a weakness if the e pawn, if the e line was
Right, but
open, then he can attack. Yes, but it's not. So it's not really a weakness. So does that mean that black's position is safe? Not really, because there is one more thing which we call potential targets. Potential target is usually a piece that may not be immediately weak right now, but it could get weak within some moves, and we can actually have in our mind this idea that if we do something like we open some files, or if we reposition our pieces, or we do certain changes in the position, then this piece, or whatever is there, will be an actual weakness, and you'll be able to plan your activity against it. So when you're looking around Black's territory right now, do you find any kind of a potential target, something that you may want to attack against, or you may want to really line up with your piece and put pressure over that?
Well, maybe a potential weakness
Potential
will
target,
be
yes, something like
will
that.
be either the king or the c6 pawn. I don't know.
Well, I don't see how you can attack the c6, because obviously it seems to be very well chained, and there doesn't seem to be
Yeah,
any...
well, it's changed, but I may start
Uh-huh.
attacking the a5 pawn somehow, and then he will have to defend it with b6, and then the c6 will
So you're
have
talking maybe like a minority attack or something like that with
to... Right, something like that.
I like that idea. Okay, so that's a potential target. It's not a weakness. Weakness is something that you're completely sure you can attack, and the target is something that you can possibly target later on. That's what we call it, potential target.
Right.
And also the king. I mean, look at the weakened light
I
squares.
think about the king is more relevant here.
It's more important and more real.
Relevant.
That's right. Yes, more relevant. Very well said. So I think that is how you should begin. See, this gives you a lot of ideas for later, and you'll see how out of this position, once we've already evaluated the weaknesses, that can give you a lot of further ideas on what you should do. Okay, so the first step of the relevant evaluation in every position is to evaluate, first of all, the actual weaknesses and the prospective targets that may be there for both sides. Now, we didn't do any assessment for white, but I really don't think that white has anything that could be a prospective target or essentially, anything that is weak already, so like a concrete weakness. So I'm thinking that we are done with that step. We found out two very important potential targets for black: his king and the pawn. As we said, that the king is more relevant. Okay, here comes the second step. The second step is very important, and this is to compare the pieces and their actual activity and value. Now, it's important that you don't just think about what the pieces stay, but it's also very important to think about what the pieces can do. This means to evaluate their actual prospects from their current positions. What you want to do right now is to exclude the kings and exclude the pawns, because obviously they're not that mobile, they're not so flexible. And you want to look at every other piece except the king and the pawn and compare it with the opponent's equal piece. Now let's begin with the strongest pieces. Let's do that with the queens. So, can you tell me about the white queen and the c2 and the black queen and c7 right there?
Okay, the white queen is much more active than the black one.
Why would you say so?
Counterpart.
Yeah.
And well, black queen has no many squares to go. It's behind the pawns. It has no many options. White queen can easily, transfer to the king side, while black queen is kind of stuck and will take like up to 3 moves to get to the king side.
Yes. And if it even goes there, how is it going to change anything? You see, it will be just there and probably make black more comfortable.
All because of the unfavorable pawn structure.
Yes, that's right. So I think white's queen is definitely much better. Now, when you find or spot a better placed piece, you can put +1 to your overall extra activity. So the idea is that you basically suggest, okay, white's queen is much better. Now, what about the rooks? I mean, let's compare these two rooks on f1 and e7.
Same thing.
Absolutely. What will be the prospect of white's rook? Where can you go? What can you do?
f3, g3.
Yes, of course, and the black rook is totally stuck. Now we can pretty much do the same thing for each and every one of the pieces. Like this rook is much more flexible, that rook is stuck, white's bishop is dominating the light squares, and the black knight has nothing. Now, probably you'll ask me, but Valerie, why do we need to think about each one of the pieces when we actually can look at this position and overall suggest that white has a much better activity? Maybe you're thinking that one right now. And let me tell you, it's important to go through each of the pieces individually, because it's not just about concluding that white has a better activity than black. It's about seeing what the potential and the prospects of each one of the white and black pieces are. And based on that idea, what you're going to do is to find out, not only that certain pieces are better than the others, and that is very important, of course, but you also discover the most important thing, and this is exactly what the prospects of the pieces are. This will give you further on a lot of ideas of where your pieces can go, what they can do, and how valuable they can be. You understand what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
essentially it gives you much more than just a simple conclusion, like I'm better, that's fine. Yes, it's not about that. It's about seeing
Mm-hmm.
a lot more about the actual pieces. And what comes as a step number 3? Well, step number 3 is to look for anything else that, in your opinion, will be important when it comes to the assessment of this position. And then you can probably say, well, that's important, and that's important, and well, essentially, I think that overall white's position is better, or maybe black's position is better. So pretty much what you need to do is to add any other things that you think matter as it comes to the assessment of the position. Anything that doesn't have to do with pawn, let's say pawn weakness, or any kind of weaknesses and piece activity. And on the other hand, still it will help you to conclude the position in a more precise way. So what else do you think matters about this position besides the activity?
Then it matters, but I don't see here how I'm gonna implement all of that after the knight goes back to f6. Kind of
Right. I mean, you mean like white is better, but it's not clear to see what he can do within this better position. Is that what
not
you
at
say?
all.
You see? Well, that's why we have to go in a structured way. So let's say we made the evaluation, so we decided that white is better. So what is it that we do next? Well, we come up with a plan. See, this whole evaluation that you made, it gave you a lot of ideas, didn't it? Light square dominance, perspective weakness on the king side, the black king, much better pawn structure, and tremendous activity. So I think right now, all we have to ask ourselves is, what do I want to do? Well, I want to attack with all those pieces. The answer is very simple. And then the other question is, where do I want to go? And you just said it. I want to go on the king side. You want to attack right against this king. I think that c6 is also a perspective weakness, but that will take a little bit of time to get there.
Yeah, I think g4 is the move here, because
Now,
if I start going with the rook in front of the pawns, nothing is gonna happen.
no.
This knight would just stuck.
No. So there are actually, when you make that evaluation, you decide where you're going to play. There are two steps that are extremely important for you and the way how you implement your plan. The first step is to concentrate more pieces right down to that area where you want to attack. Essentially, you do that by purposeful maneuvers and the simple idea of focusing more forces just where you want to attack. The second step we're going to go to shortly. Let's take a look. The first move that white did was to move rook f3 in this position, as a matter of fact. And then after knight d6, here's your idea, g4. So what actually white wants to do is not just to gain some more space, but he wants to use the second step. The second step is open files. You see, in order to make the attack, you need to have more pieces, but in order to use those pieces, you need open files, which can only happen when you exchange the pawns. So essentially, anytime when you make a flank attack, consider these two little things as a part of your attack. The upper, you need to bring more pieces in, concentrate more forces, and open files comes after that. If you focus your attention on these two things and you're consistent, you'll do what white managed to do in this game. Check this out. g4, actually next move was rook f8, okay? And now we have king h1. White is balancing right now. He actually wants to get the
That's
upper.
right. This move was part of it.
Yes, yeah, I know. You just wants to bring more pieces, and when the time is right, okay, after queen to d8, we keep improving, and when the time is right, we push. g5 goes through. Now that's a really good move. The idea of exchanging the pawns will happen just when we need to. Nevertheless, black played knight f5. So what do you think? Should white get to exchange or take on h6, or probably you should do something else?
I
Sure.
think white can actually, if white doesn't exchange, the rook is gone. If white moves with the rook to g4 to keep the rook and keep away from exchange, there is a fork. So what to do? Let me see.
I guess one possibility is to move it to f3 and protect the pawn, which will keep you away from exchanging, but...
Yeah, that's also an option, but you can't exchange this knight because you're also only gonna make a weakness in your camp. And here, I don't see, maybe go with the queen to e2 and aim for the h5 square.
Are you talking about after the exchange? After we take on f5?
I'm not sure. Maybe even before, because after he's losing time, like to exchange this rook one move or two moves that may be crucial for our queen
For
to
your
get out
attack.
of
Yeah,
positive.
I like that. I really like the idea of setting the queen up there and probably playing it on h5. But, I mean, after all, you're dominating here, aren't you? So the one thing that we want to have at least when you're dominating is to sacrifice material. I know the attack is going to be very strong, but still, sacrifice is sacrifice.
And play
It
f3.
contains like a risk factor. You know, you don't need to do it. Rook f3 is then a quite good idea. No, the idea is when we attack, we don't want to trade. But this is a little too slow and passive. You know what actually White did? He decided to exchange the knight. And it wasn't because he
Hmm.
loved the idea about exchanging pieces when the attack is going. We don't want that. So why didn't he exchange the knight? Because that knight served a really important purpose for his defense, you see. You may actually exchange pieces only then when you see that you're going to eliminate an important defender of your
If he takes
opponent.
with the pawn or even
Yeah.
with the rook.
No, wait, the pawn is fine because it closes the diagonal, and the rook doesn't need to close the diagonal. It's a less important piece used for the defense, but it doesn't help because you see White's activity is forcing. Takes, takes, and now we see the power of the concentration. White gets the Alyechin's gun, as it's called. 3 pieces, and most importantly, he has the open file, so he can use both of these features together. Actually, as a matter of fact, after queen to g2, black played rook d f7, and now all we need to find is how to use these pieces together, and there comes the beautiful rook g6. What if black plays now king h7? What would you do here as white?
Yeah, that's easy.
Yes, is it?
Let me see. Okay, it's not easy.
Not really, not quite. But I mean, having 3 pieces against an exposed king like that, there's got to be something.
Give him a check.
Where from?
G7.
Yes, that's fine, but then you run away back to h8.
And then I go with the queen to G6.
That works, but can't you do it a little faster?
Okay. Check to H6.
Yes, now that one's a little better. After this, then we've got that one. You like that? It's
Looks good.
quite cool. Yeah, you know what's amazing about this whole example is the features that that White got in order to make his plan so successful. So first, how he evaluated where he's stronger. Many people would just begin with something immediate like e4, a3, b4. So you need to first evaluate this position. Evaluate the activity of the pieces, compare them, see what are the weaknesses or the prospective targets. Then basically compare and ultimately choose what do you want to do. What's your strategy? And when you begin your plan, the most important thing of all is to focus on these 2 steps and be consistent about them. Concentrate more pieces, focus them on the area where you want to attack, like with rook f3, and then get the open files. So when you do these 2 and you balance them, then your attack really becomes successful. So what do you think about this example? Do you happen to have any questions or anything that was unclear about it?
No. I don't have any questions. It's a very good one.
Okay,
Well,
great.
now